Hello, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you again on this here Shabbat. Hope all of you been blessed and been well. Kind of wanted to get on here and do a little video to tell you what's been going on, why I hadn't been on here in the last, I guess, 4 weeks now. One, I've been war slam out. I've had a lot of work to do out in the heat, and we've been having sort of a heat wave. Been up in the 90s pretty much every day, and a couple times right up near 100. And for here, that's not normal, not the normal way of things. And a lot of rain, so the humidity to boot. And so I mean, I've been up there at our shop, working in the garage part up there. I'm in the process of trying to set me up a place in there, and I've kind of come up with a name for the business: Imagination Mechanical and Fabrication. And I've even got me another YouTube channel I've set up to kind of track the progress of setting it up. It's a lot of work, and I've been out there in that heat, and plus doing repairs on our building up there, roof repairs and stuff. And I mean, I got up there and I blistered my knees, I mean, kneeling down on it, and probably should have put on some knee pads or something, but I mean, the roof was so hot that it just, like I say, it just blistered my knees. Hopefully I got them leaks fixed, because it ruined the spot in the roof, in the ceiling in there. I had to sheetrock, had to cut it out. Then I've been working on my pickup truck. I got an old 1990 Ford F-150 pickup truck that, I mean, mechanically it's okay, but it was just, batteries draining down on it, and the tires is flat, so I had to get them all pumped up. Had to get insurance on it, get tags on it, get an inspection sticker, and all the stuff that goes with getting a vehicle going. And got it going, and then we got a box truck up there. It's got a parasitic leak on it, electrical leak. When it's sitting there off, and it drained the battery so dead that it wouldn't take a charge. And so I had to go get a new battery, and this time I got what they call a knife switch that you can mount on the battery. And then so whenever I shut it off, I open the hood up, open up that knife switch, and it just takes all the power off of it, so it don't do the same thing to this battery until I get the chance to start investigating, trying to find what circuit in there is draining the power and killing the battery. And the other thing is that on that truck it's got a lift gate, and on the side there's a switch, and that you raise the lift gate up and down with. And I don't know, I've gone up there a couple times, and the lift gate was like it had been trying to be opened up. I think somebody was trying to get into it, and I back it up near the building to where it is, about that much space between the back of the truck and the building, just so they can't get in there, because the lock's broke on it. So it's got one of these things that you turn like that, and it's got a hook that goes around in there, and then you put a padlock on it. Well, the whole thing broke off, so I got to put a new one on there. But anyway, I needed to get it running to move it out so I could store some stuff in it that's in the garage. And also I've been doing, trying to find either one of these cargo shipping containers, because them things are like mushrooms, they're everywhere, and trying to see if I can find me one of them, or maybe a couple of them, to put my eBay stuff in. And then where it was up in that attic, there's been rats up in there, and where that place was bad, I mean, it come down and there was poo in it and all that, rat poo, and I mean piles of it, and I had to clean all that stuff up. Well, I got to put poison up there, and I had been keeping my cat up there. Well, I think that from them rats, where that stuff fell down there was fleas, and because we got fleas everywhere up there, and I mean, I've been doing everything in the world trying to get rid of them. And so I finally had to bring my cat home and put her at home, because they was eating her alive, and because she didn't have any fleas. I always kept her combed, kept a flea comb. I kept her combed and kept some, flea medicine on her. And I mean, but it didn't do no good against all that onslaught. And I mean, so I got to get up in that attic now and try to, get some foggers or whatever put up there. And not only that, put some poison out for them rats, because they're smart. They won't go in a trap. You can try to trap them. They won't go in a trap. They'll walk right by one. I've seen them do it. I mean, with my own eyes. And so you got to poison them. But the thing about it is, when you poison them, a lot of times they'll die right there. They won't go outside or something. Because and I got this one kind of poison that is supposed to mummify them so that they don't stink, but they won't eat it. There's one kind, the kind that's, it's potent, it kills them dead, and they'll eat every bit of it. I mean, you can put a little bowl of it there, and you'll come back the next day and it'll all be gone. But this other stuff, this Rad-X or something like that, that's supposed to cause them to mummify, they won't eat it. They don't like the smell of it or something. I don't know, but they won't eat it. And so, that was wasted money. But so I've been real busy. I've just been real busy, and then on Shabbat I just been resting. I just just get me a good night's sleep and just kind of laze around and read the scriptures, or maybe look at some YouTube channels that I'll look at. Or something, but just kind of just take it easy and to rejuvenate, because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm not old, but I'm not young either, and so that kind of stuff, getting out there in that heat and working in it, and like up there in that shop, I've been hauling tools and equipment and parts and hardware and all that kind of stuff up there, and having unloaded. And now I got my truck, so I can, I was hauling it in our little car, and you can only get so much in there. Well, with this, I can get bigger stuff in there. I like my toolbox. I got a rolling cabinet toolbox that I've unloaded, so now I can haul it up there. And I got a scissor lift that you pump with your foot. It's like I used to use it to work on condensing units and air conditioners and stuff like that. I could just set them on there and I could pump it, like up to 300 pounds or something like that, and you can jack it up and get it up to a good working height. Well, I'm going to take that up there because, I can really use that. And I've got a lot of stuff to do. I've got, to kind of try to get this other business going, because and I've mentioned it on here before, they manufacturing is coming back to the United States in a big way. People really just, it's just now starting to roll, but it's been kind of going to start with. Intel's building this huge fab plant up here in Ohio. It's like $30 billion. They're building that. Anduril's building that drone, which they do more than just drones. They're not a defense contractor. They are a private company that manufactures all kinds of different technology, and then they sell it to the government. They don't get contracts and all that with the government to develop something. They develop the products on their own, and then they promote them to the government or whatever, or to private businesses. They make stuff for private industry and all that too. Then you have all these data centers that are these AI data centers being built everywhere. But not just that. I've been looking in, all these, there's one company up there in Illinois, Rockford, Illinois up there, Advanced Manufacturing. They own Hennig, which was a German group that made chip conveyors and stuff like that for machine tools. They are huge, and they're building all these enclosures and doing the assembly and the testing and all that for these great big huge gen sets I mean, some of the biggest ones I've ever seen. And I've seen some big ones, like at hospitals and research centers and stuff like that. I'm talking about big 16-cylinder diesels and stuff. And so these companies are going to need suppliers. These big manufacturing facilities, that they're not all vertically integrated to where they make every little piece and part. No, they make the main components and all that stuff like that, but they're going to need small components, repair stuff, stuff to be repaired, that maybe they don't have an in-house machine shop or whatever to do the repairs. And and these companies like this up in Wisconsin, Illinois, and I mean, there's all these programs that have started up for training young people, to try to get young people in, and the thing is that in this kind of business, you can make more money, honest money. You can make more money doing this than you can getting a college degree in gender studies or something. These universities have been basically criminal in luring these young people in there and promoting these degrees that are, basket weaving or whatever, some kind of just ludicrous, non-applicable degree that is not, the only place you're going to get a job doing it is in the government or something. They're just going to have the token jobs for that kind of stupidity. And the universities are charging all this money for these, getting people, lifelong debt, some of them, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get these degrees. And they go get a job making $30,000 a year. And then they want the people, the taxpayers, to pay for their degree. So the agenda is to encourage people not to go to these 4-year colleges and get these stupid degrees, but to go to a tech school. And to get high schools, like when I was a kid, high schools, they had all kinds of trade programs, that you could go into. And a skilled tradesman, a journeyman or a master electrician or a mechanic or whatever, they can make $150,000, $200,000 a year. Now, I'm not saying, chase money, but if you're going to have a job and you're going to have a career, pick one that's going to pay you well. And the vision that they've given the people over the years about manufacturing is, it's dirty, grimy, dangerous, and all that, and nothing further from the truth. A modern factory is, in a lot of respects, cleaner than somebody's house. I watched one, it was Roush or something like that, there in Charlotte. They do a lot of 3D printing, metal 3D printing, by the way. Making complex parts. It's like a clean room where these machines are set up at. And in their machine shop, where they're machining parts and stuff, same way. It's got terrazzo floors or epoxy floors, and they're spotless. So the days of greasy, grimy, now there still is some little mom and pop machine shops around that are like that. But, and there's guys that like that. They like getting their hands dirty and getting, there's nothing wrong with that. And making things. Our Creator created us to be creators. Or else why would we have the desire to do it? Why would we have the desire to make things? Because He made us that way. But what He wants us to do is, He wants us to do it as if we're doing it to Him, for Him. Do everything you do as unto Yahuwah, unto the Lord. Do it as if you're doing it for Him. Not as to please men. And, and that's what it says in Colossians. Colossians 3:23 and 24. This is Paul, of course. these little epistles, sometimes they're kind of, they ain't but 2 or 3 pages, but here we go. Because they're letters. They were letters that Paul was writing to these different churches because he would get news back from Timothy or Apollos or some of these other of his disciples would correspond with him, or even sometimes meet up with him there at Antioch or somewhere, and they would discuss the condition or the status of these churches that they had established. And so he would would write these epistles back to them, telling them, to stay strong in the faith, and telling them how they needed to do. And it follows with what you read there in Revelations chapter 1 through 3. What the Messiah told, he wrote these letters, dictated these letters to John to give to these churches, to tell them that I'm coming soon. Again, he's already done come. His second coming's already done happened. But here in Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily, as to the Adon, or the Master, or the Lord, and not unto men. Don't do it to get the praise and the glory of men. Do it as if you're doing it for Him. There's nothing wrong with having a business. There's nothing wrong with having a profession. We are told we are to work. Paul makes it clear also in here. He's telling these people that are supposed to be workers there in the church there in I think it was in Thessalonica maybe. You tell them if they were busybodies going around gossiping and all this kind of stuff rather than working. And he says if they don't work, they don't eat. And from my being there, you saw the work that I did. He was a tent maker. He made tents to earn his living. He could have got a stipend from these churches. They wanted to. They wanted to give him money and feed him and all that stuff like that, and he wouldn't do it. He wanted to set an example of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to work. Even if we're, we can be in the ministry and work in the ministry. But, but we can have a ministry and work at a regular job. Because we have things, we need things. People need things. Now, granted, there's a lot of stuff that people want that really is unnecessary. And I'm kind of glad to see the manufacturing moving back here and the tariffs being placed on a lot of this junk that's coming from China, all this cheap stuff that really people don't need. If they were more focused on taking care of their necessities and getting out of debt and stuff, then it's because they got this buying fever. I've got to have it. And a lot of it is junk. I mean, all this stuff that's China, I don't buy none of that stuff. I sell some up here that I got in auctions and storage lockers and stuff like that. But, and I mean, you can't, and this is what gets me about people. I'll have an item there that's practically new. I mean, it's not, somebody bought it, thought they had to have it, and they never even used it. And so I wind up with it, and I'm asking, a third of what you would go and buy it at Walmart or somewhere for, and they won't pay it. But then they'll turn around and go up to Walmart and pay the full price for it. Go figure. I don't get people, man. I mean, I would buy that one up there for 1/3 the cost. I mean, I kind of, I don't know. I just don't know people. But here in verse 24 it says, knowing that of the Adon, ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve Yahweh, or you serve Yahushua HaMashiach. You serve Christ. Okay? If you serve Him with all your heart, you put Him first. You put the Father first. And then, whenever you do anything, when you apply yourself to anything, do it as if you're doing it for Him. You know, not for vainglory and for the praise of men. And it'll be blessed. Whether you make a pile of money or not is not the issue. The issue is that whatever you do, like when I go up there and I'm selling at the shop up there, or down here at the little store, the little grocery store, I try to do it as if I'm doing it for the Lord. Not for my own personal gain, because I'm not getting a whole lot of that. I mean, we survive, and that's about it. But that's not the point. I always worked with my hands, as all my life. My working life. From the time I was 16 years old, but even before that, I used to go to work with my dad. He was a heavy equipment mechanic. I would go to work with him during the summer, and go help him work on this big equipment. And some of it is huge. I mean, at mines and stuff, great big trucks and excavators and stuff. And and of course he tried to discourage me from it. He didn't want me to work on stuff like that. He wanted me to be a basketball player because I'm tall. I'm 6'6", and so he's like, man, if I had your height, I'd eat basketball, sleep basketball, dream basketball. And I was like, well, I'm not you. I'm not you. I like working on things, I like making things, doing, working with my hands. And, and he tried to discourage me from it. Matter of fact, he let me get drowned in hydraulic fluid. I was working up under this big piece of equipment, big excavator, an Owenstein and Koppel. I'll never forget it. And it was a great big one. I mean, this thing, you had to climb up a ladder to get up on the tracks. And so I'm up under the bottom of it and there's a cover, great big huge cover, and it's got bolts all the way around it. And he said, I want you to take all them bolts out of there and get that cover off. So I get a big ratchet about that long, with a big old socket on it, and I get up there and I start taking, I get it all loose, and then I get a little, like a pry bar, Now see, he don't tell me that this thing is full of hydraulic fluid. I mean, probably 8 or 10 gallons in there. So I popped it, I'm under here, and I pop that cover. When I do, whoosh, I mean, I got drowned in hydraulic fluid. I got drowned. And of course, I think that's why I started getting these places, like you can see the scars on my face there. I started getting these cysts, and my hair started, coming out and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think that, because back then, that was back in the 70s, and they, the EPA had just started in like 71 or 72 or something like that. So they really hadn't addressed a lot of these chemicals that they were putting in the hydraulic fluid that, they're stabilizers, and they help to keep water out of it, and help to lubricate stuff and all that, and some of it was nasty stuff. It's not in there now. They took it out. They had to reformulate the hydraulic fluid and all that stuff. But, and then my dad, he's old school. Anybody with sense would have went back to the hotel and got a shower and got it off of him. No, he just hands me a couple of rags and I get it off my ass bed. And I had a thick head full of hair back then. I mean, real, nappy head. And it was just, just like somebody had took and soaked it with water and just flattened it down. And so I got a bunch of clean grease rags and got it off as good as I could. And he had an old pair of coveralls in the side of the truck, and he said, get them old coveralls out there and get out of them clothes and put them on, and let's get back to work. And that's just the way it was. And I was out there all day like that with that stuff on my skin, and it was burning. It was burning my skin. And it took a week. It took me at least a week of washing my hair to get it out of my hair. And so, I think he kind of done that just to try to discourage me away from wanting to do that kind of work. But it didn't work. I mean, I didn't work on heavy equipment or nothing. but I worked with my hands. I worked on machines and stuff, and just I just always had an interest in it, and the complexity of it and how they worked, and even from the time I was just a little tiny thing. My dad was at that time he was a UAW mechanic for Chevrolet, and I'd see him out there working on his car, and I'd come out there and get under the car, and be down there messing with his tools and all that stuff, and then I was always dragging up old old junk, like an old lawnmower or old car parts and stuff, and I'd take them apart, to see what was inside of them and all that. I just had it in my blood, I reckon. But so I don't see, Yahushua, he was a carpenter. And I'm sure he was a skilled carpenter. He wasn't just, your old jackleg guy, he was a master carpenter. And, because that's what his father did, and that's what his whole family did. Back then, whatever your business was, a skill or whatever, it was a family thing. And of course, I don't have any, kids that's of the age to train to do that now, but I've thought about it that, what I'd like to do is if I can make a go of it, not to make a lot of money or anything like that, but I thought about, a lot of these young people that there's really nothing for them around here to do except get in trouble, and get on drugs and all that kind of stuff. And why not try to find one that really likes working with their hands and stuff like that and really wants to learn and make an apprentice out of them, and teach them the skills that I have, I've got, my whole life, being around that kind of stuff, trades and not just any one particular, but I've been exposed to a whole lot of them and learned a lot of stuff, by watching other people, that are, if you want to learn something, learn from the best. I've worked in Boston, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Montreal, San Juan. I've worked all over with skilled people, among the best in their fields. And so I would watch them, when I had a little spare time or whatever, like I've done startup commissioning. So when you're starting something up, it's running, it's got to do its run in and shake down and all that kind of stuff. So you got a lot of time, you're just kind of standing around. And I'd watch guys insulate pipe. And good. These guys were really good, and that's just done, meticulous work. And I watched what they did, how their technique was and all that stuff. And so, because I'd done some insulating too, we had, refrigeration piping had to be insulated, and sometimes I'd have to tear it off and fix something or whatever and then redo it. So I learned. And I learned piping. I'm certified by the American Welding Society in copper brazing, process piping. That wasn't my chosen field. My actual chosen field was electrical and electronics. I was an industrial electrician, and I worked in big manufacturing plants doing big power and big motors and big motor control centers and big power panels and transfer switches and big transformers and all that kind of stuff. Running big pipe, big conduits like that, would wire that big around, and 4160, 13.2, stuff make the hair on your head stand up. And and controls, we've done a lot of control stuff, control wiring, big control panels, because these machines, like we done one project, it was Reeder, which is a Swiss company. They made these carding systems for textile mills, and carding is where they clean the cotton. They're cleaning it and orienting the fibers. It orients the fibers, and then it takes them into a machine that makes it into a rope. Then they take all them ropes and they take them to what they call the drawing system, a drawing machine, and they take like 10 of those. They're big cans about that big, probably a foot and a half, 2 foot across, and 4 foot high, and they run that rope down in there. It's got like a spring loaded system, and it just runs it in there, and it goes down, and then it goes over to these drawing, and they'll have 5 of those big canisters on each side, and then they go up and they go in there and they draw them all together. They draw them, and they draw it into one big, draw down rope, and then it goes from there to spinning, and and then they spin it, and it comes out into a string, and your thread basically. So thread goes from being like this to being the size of a needle, and so they that's the process. Well, when they were installing those machines, they had big control panels, so we've done all the conduit work. We run all the conduit, all the flex, all the wiring trough. We pulled all the control wiring. We wired everything up, and we used, we didn't just go in there and take a couple wire nuts and tie them together. No, everything that we did was crimped. And, so because you're on a machine, wire nut will vibrate loose after a while, so you can't use stuff like that. You got to take and put a sleeve on there, crimp it, and then put a cap on it, and then put a rubber boot on it. I mean, it's a big ordeal. Make up split bolts on big motors and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to it. And it had to be done right. I mean, because when you're talking heavy voltage, 480, 4160, stuff like that, people's lives are on the line. So you have to really be meticulous about what you do. I mean, like making a split bolt up, it's like 4 different kinds of tape involved. There's friction tape, there's rubber tape, and then varnished cambric, and then you got Scotch 33. You got all these different tapes that have to be used that protect it from abrasion and stuff. So you had to know this kind of stuff. Well, I'd love to pass a lot of that knowledge on to a younger person, and so that I would know that like, because here in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, you got Solomon here. And he's saying here in this is Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10, he says, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, no device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest." So whatever you do in life, do it to the fullest. And don't be... because they was, whenever I was in some of these places here, these people were real protective of their knowledge. Like, you're going to steal something from me and you're going to take my job kind of thing. And I've never been that way. As a matter of fact, I was always one of these people that the companies that I worked for would want me to train people. Because I always did everything. Like when a lot of the guys would get off work, they'd go do something, go out and, play pool, drink beer or whatever, I mean, sometimes I would on a weekend or something, but most of the time I'd go back to my room and I would sit there and go over blueprints. I would read, and this is back when you had dial-up. Back when you had dial-up on the computer, well, I could go to websites for people like Honeywell, West Control, Partlow, Yokogawa, different ones, and I could look up information, and even download it on process controllers and stuff like that, and PLCs. And so I would study that stuff and learn everything I could about it. And the same thing with the mechanical systems. I got a good friend of mine who lives up here in Solon, Ohio, Scott Farrar Scientific, one of the smartest men I've ever met. He's a thermodynamicist, and but me and him hit it off. We were both working up at Merck Pharmaceuticals, and he had a system that he had designed and built up there, an ultra low system like we had. Ours was big and complicated. His was real simple. His was a whole lot more simple than ours was, and his worked. Ours worked too, but it just, I ended up having to redesign, do a lot of re-engineering on ours, because they were too dynamic. You want something that's steady. You don't want something that's all over the place. And but we would talk, and he told me anytime I wanted to know anything. He was one of these that was willing to share information and all that, and his knowledge. And so I used to call him when I was wanting to learn, know about how to size a valve, like an expansion valve or a Crott valve or ORI or ORD or something like that. I would call him and he would give me the information, freely. And he wanted me to come to work for him. He's even today, he still occasionally will call me and ask me if I'm still doing contracting, because I was doing contracting there in Raleigh, and I was, doing some of this work at pharmaceuticals for people under contract as a sub, because they were wanting to do the business, but they didn't know how. They didn't know how to actually go out and install these systems. So I would go out there and supervise their people and teach, show them what they needed to do and that kind of stuff. And I got paid good to do it. And so Scott, he goes and puts these systems in, but he's the brain. You know what I mean? He don't want to be out there actually having to install these systems. He'd rather get somebody that is more skilled at that to do it. And then him to come out and start it up and get it running and all that kind of stuff. But I just thought, man, I'm totally in a totally different line now. I'm a grocery clerk. I'm a grocery clerk. And well, if you ever change your mind, man, you know where I'm at. So but he's kind of, and so. I feel like I've had people in my life that have been forthright with information and knowledge that were willing to share it with me and teach me. And so I feel like I ought to pass it on to somebody younger, but trying to find young people that are, that have motivation and, ambition, that want to do something. And I really fully blame, and it's a societal thing. But it in the societal side of it is neglect and being dissociated from the government, and the government wanting to please everybody, to get votes or whatever, so they just hand out to everybody, which has destroyed the work ethic. America used to have a pretty good work ethic. And everybody wanted to work, and back when I was growing up, jobs that that now they're paying people $20 an hour, like in California, to do a waitress job. Well, that was stuff that teenagers did. They'd get out of school, or when they got to be in high school. And they would let them out early, like 2 o'clock or something, or 1 o'clock, and they'd go to work over here at McDonald's, for example, or some little mom and pop, hardware store or whatever, to get some work skill, to show up, to work when you're there, and all of the kind of life skills that people need in order to function in a society. You would get it there. You get, interact with people. You would help people. You would interact with the customers. You learn how to deal with people, and all different kinds. And so when they started with the minimum wage stuff, they began to destroy that labor market, because if you're going to have to pay somebody this much money, you're going to want to hire somebody that already knows what to do and put them straight to work. You don't want to have to train some green kid. So you basically kill the youth labor market. And so they don't get those skills. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that needs to change. It needs to go back to, you can pay them, if the minimum wage is $8 an hour, you can pay them $4 an hour. Or $3 an hour or something. Some spending money. To teach them to earn money. And then they need to be teaching them in school how to be responsible with their money. How to manage it, how to write a check, how to keep a bank account, all these kind of things, how to how money works, financial skills. And because if you look at the scriptures, it talks about money a lot. And there's nowhere in there that it says that having money or earning, even being rich is wrong. It's how you look at the money and how you use the money that determines whether it's wrong or not. Because it does say the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And it is the love of money. You have to teach kids to respect the money as a tool, to be used like a tool, but not to love it. And so when you look at the media, of course, that's how Hasatan operates. He operates through Hollywood and the media, and to put things into the eye gate and the ear gate. And what do they always do? They glorify these people in Hollywood, their lavish lifestyles, the lifestyles of the rich and famous kind of stuff. And, this smooth, easy life, you just become an actor or a singer or something, and you just and not realizing how them people basically sell their souls to get there. I mean, I've heard stories, about like one particular, like that Eminem or whatever, how he said he was tormented by demons continuously. And I believe it. I believe that those people do, in essence, I don't really think you can sell your soul, so to speak. But I think what you can do is you open yourself up for being possessed by muses. Like if you're a musician or whatever, singer, you or even actors and stuff, actresses and all that stuff. These muses, which are demonic in nature, that possess a person and give them those qualities and those characteristics, and to be able, because I've even seen people, that singers, and they totally change. They're like this one minute, and when they get up on the stage, they're like somebody totally different. You can see it, not just hear it. You can see a physical change in them. And then, like Jim Morrison said that they was a shaman or whatever that was up there on stage with him the whole time he was up there on stage, but nobody else could see it. But he could. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But he claimed it, and I don't doubt it. But, because that's the system through which Hasatan is programming and captivating the masses. Spell casting. That's, the rituals. If you look at what they do up there on stage, it's like a ritual. And they're casting some kind of spell on you. Look how the people in these concerts, how they act. They get like in a frenzy. Why? Because they are doing this ritual that is, that is like casting a spell on these people. And so, that kind of stuff, no. It's not to say that the media and, that it cannot be used for good as well. Everything can be used for good or bad. It's, it's the duality of everything, not good and evil. That's the system that we are in. And, we chose that. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. We chose that system. Or Adam did. And Adam and Eve, because she's the one that was deceived. But, we, as individuals, we can make our own choice about what, which path we're going to, go down. Are we going to, go down the straight and narrow, or are we going to go down the broad path? And do what's right, do what's good, work with our hands, and provide for our own, bread. I mean, because that's what Paul's saying there in Colossians, what he was saying there, I think it's in Thessalonians. I should have looked it up, but I didn't. But anyways, telling them people, you should work with your own hands and eat your own bread. Don't take from other people while you're running around gossiping and being a busybody. So when we do anything, let us do it as unto the Lord, as if we're doing it for Him, because He owns it all anyway. And again, our Creator created us to be creators, even though there's nothing new under the sun. We're just replicating what has already been. But it's the mind that we have that is designed to be inquisitive, to want to know. I mean, look at Solomon there in Ecclesiastes. He saw all these things under the sun, and he saw that they were vanity and vexation of spirit. But that doesn't mean that he didn't, still do them. That he didn't still, have these things built and these things made and these things created. It always says that Solomon, he built this, he built the temple. Well, no, Solomon didn't build the temple. No, he just had it built. And, because he was a king. You don't expect a king to get out there and carve and bust up stone and all, do you? No, I mean, he just commissioned it to be built, and other things, his palace and other palaces and, civic buildings and, different things like that. I mean, he commissioned to be done, and he planted groves, and he planted, orchards, and had big, gardens, and, all that kind of stuff he did, because he had the power and the authority to do it. And because he, wanted, had a vision of how to create these, lush gardens, around his palace and all that stuff. And then he had, gardeners and, horticultural people and all that stuff to make it happen. And he would tell them, I want it done like this, and they would do it the way he had created it in his mind. And that's what we do. We're drawing off of the aether. We're drawing off of the aether is where all this information is. It's like a big database. That's why there's no, and it's where we can kind of draw off of that ideas and stuff. That we think that we thought it up, but really we're just drawing off of the the aether, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or the Akashic record, or the prana, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, different names for it, but it's the same thing. It's a repository of knowledge, all knowledge, and so good or evil. And so, I choose to do good. Because the Father has put it in my heart and in my mind to know what is right and to seek to do what is right. Not that I'm perfect, and I still fall short. But I repent daily. But I'm moving further and further towards righteousness. And it's a process. It's a process. We learn a lot of stuff over a lifetime, and it can take nearly a lifetime to get rid of it. It's just stuff that gets into our programming, and once it's in there, it's kind of hard to get it out. But whatever we do, no matter what we are going after to do in our life, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, whether it's in our craft or skill, whatever. Do it as unto the Lord. Do it as if you are doing it for Him. Not for vainglory and for the praise of men, but for Him. And do it with all your heart. I mean, don't set out to do something and then just do it half-heartedly. Why even bother? And that's, again, another man I worked for, and he was a hard man. He was kind of a hard man to work for. And I don't know, but I would say he's probably deceased now. But his name was John Schuler. He owned a company called Schuler's Electric, and I learned a lot there. When it come to electrical, and I'm talking about big stuff, I'm talking about like power plants and stuff, there was nobody better. I mean, he was probably, and he started out as a green helper. Never went to college or anything. Both his parents, from what I understand, were both big-time civil engineers from Germany, and they built big power projects down in South America and stuff. I mean, and that's where he was where he was born at, and he moved to the United States with his parents whenever they come up here to do some kind of big project. And so, but he didn't become a civil engineer like they were. He got in the electrical field, started out as a green helper, and worked his way up to being the vice president of a big company, and was supposedly in line for the president's job, and family member got it or something, and he ticked him off, so he went out and he started his own company, and just in a few years he was doing millions of dollars worth of business. I mean, that's just how good he was. And I learned a lot from him, but he was a hard man to work for, and he was a perfectionist. I mean, he walked around with a little torpedo level in his back pocket, and he had an eye, man. I mean, he could see if a conduit, you run all these conduits up a wall out of a big control panel, he could tell if one of them wasn't level. He'd go over and throw a level on it and say, "This ain't level. You need to fix it." And and if it was something so bad that you did, he'd make you tear it out on your time and redo it. Right. And the only thing that really bothered me about him is that he'd make an example of you out in front of everybody else. I mean, it wasn't just me, anybody. If he had a beef with him, I mean, he'd just call you out right there, instead of calling you over to the side and saying, "Hey, man, that ain't right. You need to redo that. And you're going to redo it on your time. Because I'm paying you to do it right." So, but the thing I learned from it is to do it right. Do it the right way. Do it the right way the first time. Because it takes twice as long to do it wrong, because you got to redo it. You can do it right one time, or you can do it wrong, twice. And so again, here's one of these people that I just happen to be blessed with having him in my life to teach me a life lesson about when you go to do something, do it right. Do it with all your heart. Don't, and if you work for somebody else, do the same thing. Do it as if you were doing it for him. And if you're doing it for him, you want to do it right. You want to do it joyfully. You want to do it with a happy heart. You don't want to do it resentfully. Do it right, and you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you put your best effort into it and you've done it right. I mean, there's a satisfaction that comes with that. And I'm not talking about pride, I mean, I'm talking about just a satisfaction of knowing that you put your effort into it and you did it right, and it'll last, it'll be there, and you benefited somebody. You give them a good job, and you earned your money. You earned your pay. People, well, I don't get paid enough. Well, when you agree to take a job for somebody and they tell you what they're going to pay you and you take it, you agree to it. I should have looked that up too about the vineyard, the master of a vineyard that sent one of his servants out to hire people to work in his vineyard during the harvest. And he hired some early in the morning for $1 a day. And they agreed to it. And he saw that they weren't going to get, they were not getting enough done. They needed to hire more people. So they went out and got more, and he paid them $1 for the rest of the day. And he done this like all the way up to right towards the end of the day. I mean, like a couple hours before the end of the day, and he paid them $1. And when it come time to settle up, the people that started first saw that he was paying those people that came right there at the last $1, and they only worked a couple hours. Well, they were a little bit livid about it. And he says, I've done nothing wrong to you. Did you not agree with me this morning to work for $1 for the day? Take your wages and go your way. Don't be evil. Because that is evil. If you agree to it, that's like I'll give you an example. I was 15 and I lived on a textile mill hill. We call them mill hills. We're mill housing. And there was a guy there, what most people probably call a slumlord. He owned a bunch of them old houses, and they were old. They were from like the early 1900s, 1908, up until the 40s or 50s they'd been building them, and originally they were built by the people that owned the mill. They built the houses, they built the water system, they built the lighting. They built the streets, and my grandmother told me that when they first were living there, that they had a spigot every so often up the street. So if you needed water, you went out there to the spigot and got your water. It didn't even come into the house. And so, but anyway, they had a little general store and a movie theater and all belonged to the company. But anyhow, that old guy, he had a house over there that the sewer line from the house out to a manhole needed to be replaced. And it was probably about 50 feet. And I don't know what you know about sewer, but it's all gravity. That most of the system is gravity. They do have pumps in places where they got what they call lift stations that lift it up. But the pipe comes out up here and it starts sloping down towards the manhole, and so it come out about a foot underground, and by the time it gets to the manhole it's about 5 feet underground. And so, and there's a great big oak tree right there. I mean, probably 4 or 5 feet in diameter, 6 feet in diameter, and the roots are going everywhere. So I had to get out there with a pick. He wanted me to dig that up. And he told me to pay me $3 an hour, and I agreed to it. Okay, which that was back in the 1970s. So, that was about, I think minimum wage was like $2.35, $2.65, something like that an hour. So $3 wasn't bad, I figured, especially for a 15-year-old kid. So he brought me the tools, this pickaxe and a shovel and an axe, because I had to chop through them roots. And man, you're talking about, and this is in the middle of July in Rockingham, North Carolina. It was like 105 degrees that day. And so I got out there, I started out, early that morning, man, and I mean, it was already hot, but I'm out there and I'm getting into, and it's all terracotta pipe, and it come in like 3-foot sections, and they put it together all the way out to that manhole, and the roots had growed into it and busted it all up. Man, it stunk, I mean, it was just reeking, flies buzzing everywhere. It was bad. But I did, and by about, I don't know, about noon, and it was really reeking, man. It was really hot, and in the back of my head, this voice was saying, man, this ain't worth $3 an hour, Throw them tools down and go home, And I was like, but there's another little voice in there saying, no, you don't. You agreed to do it for that. You said you'd do it. Finish it. And so I did. I worked on it, and it was almost dark by the time we started getting the new pipe in there, and it was PVC, PVC pipe about that big around. And his stepson or whatever, he come up there and put the pipe in. And then I had to cover it all back up. And he'd come up there, hey, ain't you done yet? And I was like, man, ain't I done yet? I said, you ought to come up here and try it. And like I say, I went from, and you got to dig it. I had it dug about 1.5 feet wide. You got to be able to get down in there and work, and for him to get down in there and put the pipe in and all that, and you got to have room, and then you got to put something under it to kind of support it. And it ain't like you can just dig a little tiny hole like that right there. You can't. And so I dug that, 18-inch wide trench from about 1.5 feet deep all the way down to about 6 foot deep. And then plus getting all that stuff out of there and all them old roots, I had to get an axe and start chopping them roots. And some of them that big around, great old big roots, you had to chop them out and all that. And so, but I did it. And then this is the other thing. You talking about a cheapskate. He come up there at lunch and brought me a barbecue sandwich and a drink, or Pepsi. And that lady that lived there, she let me clean up there and all that, and I eat the sandwich and all that. And I lived 2 blocks over. My house was over there. I could have went home and got something to eat. My mama would have fixed me something. And so I was like, yeah, that's not bad, Well, when I went down there to collect my money, he took out for that pop and that sandwich. He owed me, what was it I ended up working there? I think I think I ended up with like $15 or $20 or something. It wasn't much. And so, and then he took out the drink and the sandwich. But the moral of the story is that whatever you start, finish it. And don't complain about the wage if you agreed to it. If that's what you agreed to, if when you're going to get hired on at a job, if what they offering you ain't what you want, then you need to speak up and say, no, I think you need to pay me a little bit more than that. And they may give it to you. Then again, they might not. But, especially if you're starting out, young and you're just starting out a job, you can't expect to go in there and get top pay in a corner office. It just don't work that way. You have to earn your stripes, as they say. You got to work your way up. And I did. I started, like I say, I started out doing stuff like that and worked my way up, to pretty much at the top of the field that I was in. I done pretty good. I was blessed, and so that's kind of one of the reasons why I decided to start that up. It's not just to start making a bunch of money, manufacturing or anything like that. I like working with my hands. I've got the tools and equipment. It's just been sitting there, drawing dust, not getting used, buried, just heaps of stuff. And because I was a contractor, so I had a lot of equipment and stuff, that was necessary for being a contractor. And I'm going to put it to use. I'm it's just a waste of it sitting there. Is either put it to use or sell it. And, keep the stuff I need, to maintain our stuff, because I try to maintain we try to maintain all our own stuff, and we got a few people around that does, some odd jobs and stuff for us, little carpentry jobs or stuff like that, stuff that I don't have time to do. And but sometimes I do it. If I got a minute, like working on that pickup truck, changing the oil and putting new valve cover gasket on a car. You know, I mean, I'm perfectly capable of doing it. It's just sometimes having the time. Well, when I'm up there at that shop selling, well, I can pull a car right up there and I can be working on it and still wait on somebody if I have to. I mean, or I can be working in there in that shop, building something, working on a machine. I mean, you know, matter of fact, I got a brand new, we bought a brand new refrigerator, a little refrigerator, probably about 5 feet tall and, you know, about that wide. It's a nice little refrigerator. It's an RCA. Bought it at an auction up there in Ohio along with some other stuff. But I went up there and we bought, mainly the reason we was going up there was we got an ice machine to make bags of ice so we can bag our own ice. And so my woman, she's always figuring, look, if we got to go all the way up to Columbus to get this stuff, we might as well make it worth the while and get some other stuff that we can sell and pay for it, or you know, which the refrigerator was going to put in our cabin down there. We rented it out, but that guy had his own refrigerator. So, well, this one was in the box, supposedly brand new, still in the box. And when we unboxed it, one of the pipes in there was broken. Just same with the ice machine. Same thing with the ice machine. It was in the box, and it had a broken pipe on it. Now, did they take I think what happened is that they pulled the boxes off, looked at them and saw that they were broken. They just put the box back on there, stapled it back around, and sold it that way. You know, somebody bought it somewhere. They opened it up. It was like that, and the company that sold it to them took it back, give them another one, or whatever, that kind of thing. And then they took it and just sent it over to the auction people and let them get rid of it. Well, I had to fix the ice machine. I got it fixed and it's working good. But now this refrigerator, I just took it up there to the shop and I'm gonna fix it and I'm gonna use it myself. I've got a little, one of them little tiny little not even apartment refrigerator. I mean, more like a motel kind of refrigerator. So I'm gonna, get rid of it, and I'm gonna keep this one here because, I'm up there a lot, and I want to eat, and I don't want to have to go. And about all our restaurants up there is all closed. I mean, we had a Long John Silver's, it closed. We had 2 little mom and pop restaurants, Leona's and Dixie's. They both closed. Now the only thing left there is Dairy Queen and them hot dogs and stuff like that. They them mystery meat hot dogs. I don't eat them. I eat beef hot dogs and that's it. And they're, the kind that's got like 3 ingredients in it or something, But anyway, I got a hot plate. I can kind of cook something up if I want to. And then I got it, and I go up to the trailhead up here and I get unpasteurized milk, and so I got good milk. I don't really get it to eat with anything or anything like that. I just drink it because I want the enzymes and the nutrients and stuff that's in it and the fat. I mean, it's got like that much fat floating around on the top of it. Shake it up real good, and you're getting good, a good fat. It's not cheap. It's $20 a gallon, but I get it by the quart, and I get one a week, that kind of thing. And but I'm up there, pretty much all the time. And Becca's running the little store down here, and so I figured, look, we got that 3-bay garage. I've got all that equipment stuff. Why not start putting it to use? And like I said, maybe at some point, if I can make it, start making some money, then I can hire me a young person that really does want to learn and start teaching them. Start teaching them, how to braze, how to weld, how to use power tools, how to use instruments, test instruments, and how to make jigs, and how to set stuff up to how to make a jig to set it up to weld something, and knowing that when you weld stuff, a lot of times it'll distort the metal and make it bend and stuff, and how you correct for that. And and some of that stuff, like the MIG welding, I've never really MIG welded. I've stick welded, with an arc welder, and I've done a lot of gas welding and brazing and all. But I figure, I've got a MIG welder. Okay, I can teach myself. I've been watching some of these little videos on YouTube, little short 15, 20-minute videos where they show, like for beginners, MIG welding for beginners and stuff, using flux core wire instead of using gas wire, with the gas flux, that kind of stuff. I mean, and, I can, get in there and get me some metal and just sit there and start practicing on it, until I get to where I'm, able to make a decent weld. And again, I'll be 63 before long, and some people say, well, man, it's a little bit late to be starting that kind of thing. Well, yeah, maybe, but if I can pass some of it on to somebody younger and it might benefit them in some way, and plus, again, I like doing it, I like working with my hands, and it's a good, I can also use it to try to reach young people, with the message of Yahushua. And that just like I do in there in the store, I'll if I see an opening and I feel like a person will be receptive, then I'll start talking. I'll use it as a lead in to start talking about scripture and about Yahushua. And of course, I don't always feel led to. Because again, we're not supposed to cast our pearls before swine. If somebody is not going to be receptive to it, you're just wasting your time. You need to be led by the Ruach. The Ruach will lead you to all truth and guide you to, who you need to, give the message to, because he says and does what the Father tells him. That's what he does. And he's sort of the messenger and guide of the Father. He's the one that he'll send the Ruach to lead you to Yahushua. And so, with that, I think I'm going to end it there. I think that, some people, oh man, you need to be just doing this. You don't need to be worrying about doing that kind of stuff. Well, there's no any honest and right occupation. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with doing it. There is occupations that are wrong, that are, criminal and are, corrupt. No, you want to stay away from that. But if it's right, like it says, like Paul says if it's right, if it's righteous, if it's lovely, if there's any good in it, meditate on these things. And working with your hands and doing, being creative is right. There's nothing wrong with it. And or else our Creator would not have created us to be creators. Just that simple. And we can use it as a part of our ministry as well. By starting a business and, to use it to, by example. Paul was constantly setting examples. Just like Yahushua. He lived by example. He was a carpenter by trade. And then he went full-time in the ministry. His last 3.5 years or whatever was his ministry. But he was a master carpenter. Everything he did with his whole heart, as unto the Father. And that's the way we should follow his example. And so that, I'm going to call it a wrap on this one. I love you folks. I saw where I've had some new subscribers here lately. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining. We don't do this to get subscribers. We don't do it to get monetization or anything like that. That's not what I do this for. I've got 151 videos on here. If it was about money, then I would have probably quit a long time ago, because that's a lot of work, a lot of effort, to do it, even though it's just talking. But I do some research and searching the scriptures, and I could just be resting, and kick back, drinking something cool and reading the scriptures or meditating or whatever, and not do this. But I like doing it. I like learning and discovering new truth. And because I've really been on a journey that things have been being revealed to me. I've been being led to revealing about things like the flat earth, and about the little season, and about the nature of everything, the deception, how we have been so thoroughly deceived about everything. Hasatan has not been asleep, I can tell you that. And we can see the controllers, the Zionist controllers. We can see their hand everywhere, in everything. They're in everything. And well, what do? You just pray. Keep your nose to the grindstone. Do what's right. Stay working. Stay faithful, and keep your belief. And grow in your belief and in love. Perfect love casts out all fear. And that's how we fulfill the law, is through love. Yahushua made that clear. Love the Father with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, for in this is all the law and the prophets. So that's where we need to keep our focus. Even as we endeavor to do things, to provide for our families, and to there's nothing wrong with taking and having doing something that you enjoy. That makes it just that much better. The old saying is, if you do something you love or like, you'll never work a day in your life. It's only work whenever it's you don't like it, when you don't want to do it. You're just doing it for the money or for a job. Again, I encourage you, if you're going to do something that you like and enjoy, and then it won't be work. It'll be a joy. And with that, I love you folks. I pray for you. I pray that you'll be blessed. And I'll see you again on the next Shabbat, if Yahweh was willing, and I ain't wore out. Goodbye.